is just fantastic. Captain's Log, Subdates 211130.3. Rarely have we welcomed someone to the cubes that gets a round of applause from every single inmate, which I know I've said this before in fact within this series. I'm also pretty sure I saw a prison guard slip this new inmate a congratulatory cigarette. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Welcome to the Halls of Injustice. Today we welcome inmate number 104 Penelope Jackson to the ISO cubes. Her crime is murder, and it has one of the most interesting and quite frankly delicious stories I've ever come across, and I can thank my sister for this one because she told me about it after dinner, and I had to actually look it up to find that Penelope Jackson was in fact trending on Twitter. And while we're looking at this trending tab, I'm going to go to this tweet. Jenny Mara blue checkmark. I was quite astonished tonight to see BBC News at 6 leading with Penelope Jackson murdering her husband. Awful and terrible. But does the BBC know that 3 women are murdered by their husbands' partners every week in the UK? Can you lead with that every time it happens, please? What I'm seeing here is, you don't like a juicy story, which is what this is, and you'll understand why in a moment. So instead you have to constantly say, men are worse than women. What a terrible mentality to have. Do you believe it's some form of intellectual honesty? Or, is it more than likely, you're just a misandrist? Or stupid. I hear they're mutually exclusive anyway. And to be honest, when it comes to the BBC reporting on this, they only reported on it because the police camera footage was so delicious that they had no choice but to run with it. It was as juicy as a medium rare steak. Gorgeous. Penelope Jackson is a 66-year-old retired accountant from Avon and Somerset. She was married for over 24 years to former Army Lieutenant Colonel David Jackson. On the surface, their marriage looks like a perfect one, but as no such thing actually exists in reality, we can use the statements from David's own brother to support the claim that this marriage was anything but perfect. In fact, it was littered with manipulative, coercive, and violent behavior from David, allegedly. During a birthday dinner over Zoom back in February with their daughter, or with Penelope's daughter, the Jacksons, Penelope and David, argued over an iPad charger and a Bubble and Squeak side dish. Penelope then went to the bedroom with a kitchen knife and admitted later on she was at the time considering suicide. Penelope claimed that she wanted an apology from David, but David simply said no, and it is claimed he goaded her by suggesting she get on with it. Penelope Jackson then goes on to tell a court later on that she lost it and thought that she cannot do this, it's not fair, and she then went on to lose control. So what she did next was slash him across the chest, go downstairs to write a note of confession. Shortly after, David emerged to call 999, and during the course of that call, he said that she couldn't even do the stabbing right. Penelope snapped and buried that blade in him 2 further times within the abdomen. In an 18-minute phone call to emergency services, Penelope Jackson told the call handler that David was bleeding to death with any luck on their kitchen floor, adding, "I thought I'd get his heart, but he hasn't got one." She repeatedly refused to help the victim when the operator asked her to take steps such as apply pressure to the wound or throw him a towel to try to stem the bleeding. Penelope Jackson also confessed in the 999 call to killing her husband and claiming she was compos mentis, but in a later statement claimed she remembered very little of the evening's events and had been in a state of traumatized shock. Now this is where it gets very interesting, because we have the police camera footage. It is about 2 minutes long, and I'm going to play it from start to finish. There are some incredibly spicy quotes in this. When you consider what she's done to how she's reacted, it's spicy.
Hey madam, do you want to just step outside for me a minute? Can you come outside?
Yes.
Thank you.
He's on the kitchen floor.
Okay, at this moment in time, okay, if you just listen to my colleague, under arrest suspicion of attempt murder, mate.
Under arrest with suspicion of attempt murder. You do not have to say anything,
not
but
11. We've got
it
one
may harm
female
your
in
defence.
custody.
You do not mention when questioned anything you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence.
I'll go in and see what they do.
Yeah. Could I get my coat?
Just bear with me 2 seconds.
In there. I admit it all.
Alright.
Just get them. Alright, I want to go in. Alright.
No,
So-
he's on the kitchen floor.
Can someone just stay with Devon while I go in?
There's nothing nasty, and I'm certainly not. My coat's in the.
Yeah, just
Ouch,
wait
it's
2
a bit
seconds.
hot.
Alright, you okay? You alright?
With any luck, they'll be too late.
Alright.
What's your name, my love?
Well, I'm called Penny, but Penelope Jackson.
Where do you live here? You do live here?
Yes. Can I get my coat?
We'll get you a
Right,
coat
get
for
the
you.
ambulance in. Pronto, we need
Oh,
CPR.
don't. No, please don't.
Yeah, we need the
I should
ambulance
have
in.
stabbed him a bit more.
We've got CPR being done at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Penelope, come with me, mate.
You want my keys?
Now, before we get to the trial, the jury, the conviction, because yes, obviously she's guilty, you saw the video. It's hard not to be. There is a lot of conflicting information when it comes to motivation behind this, and whether or not manipulative, coercive, violent behaviour from David could impact upon this. So someone suffering from a form of domestic violence, acting out, should in any way then diminish a sentence. For example, David's own brother Alan Jackson spoke out in defense of Penelope, describing his brother as an arrogant bully who could be very violent after having a drink, and that his attitude and behavior as a man changed once he joined the military and developed a drinking habit, and that he hid his personality behind a Mr. Nice Guy mask. He further supported claims against his brother when it came to their mother Lillian, where it is believed that he, David, was accused of attempting to strangle her, along with pointing out that during a heated bitter row, his brother David left him a recorded message. Alan, if you don't pick up the phone and if anything happens to Mum before we get her out of hospital, I'll walk all over your grave and walk all over you. With it being believed by Alan that he used the same domineering tone when speaking to Penelope. But to counter this, David had an estranged daughter from a previous marriage called Jane, who accused Penelope of being an abuser in the relationship, suggesting that she had taken advantage of a culture that does not support male victims of DV. Quoted as saying, "My father was a proud man, and this consequently cost him his life. He would not seek help from someone bullying, berating, and psychologically controlling him, because he would have viewed that as a man should not be experiencing this and felt shame." A point generally agreed upon during the trial itself was that lockdowns itself had actually exacerbated already pre-existing tensions within the marriage. And so when this was convened, the trial lasted 2 weeks. The defense lawyer Claire Wade tried to persuade the jury that Penelope Jackson had lost control after being pushed to the edge by long-term intermittent abuse. However, the jurors decided that despite the allegations, Penelope was in control of her actions on the evening that she had murdered her husband, and that her behavior was not consistent with that of a person with a normal degree of tolerance and self-restraint. So when the jury decided to vote on this, they voted 10-2 majority verdict, guilty, which has annoyed some people. For example, the Domestic Abuse Commissioner Nicole Jacobs saying, "I have been concerned about some of the sentencing of domestic homicides for some time, which is why the Victims Commissioner and I called on the government to conduct an independent review. It is time that we ensured that the nature of DV is fully understood in these cases and that sentencing truly reflects the reality and gravity of domestic homicide crimes, which often follow prolonged periods of domestic abuse." So with all of that, we get to a sentence. Inmate 104 Penelope Jackson was given a life sentence. In this case, the judge has decided to take it from the minimum outlined in sentencing guidelines of 15 years to 18 years minimum term, saying, "I have no doubt you intended to kill your husband, and it was a premeditated murder. Your behavior shows a shocking level of callousness. During the 4 days of giving evidence, I did not detect a shred of genuine remorse on your part for the crime you have committed." Claire Wade QC defending is going to appeal this, because much of those who were meant to come forward and talk about the relationship were not called upon, and much of the evidence was ignored. Claire Wade also believes that because there are no real guidelines for dealing with manipulative coercive behavior, as it is a more newer form of DV law, they may not have been able to take this all into account. Then again, much of it is he said, she said, and there is very little evidence to support it beyond anecdotes from a few people. Which does sound unfair, I know, but you have two conflicting sides saying two different things. And in this instance, the jury have sided with the prosecution, which means by extension the estranged daughter. Hello everyone, this is Future Meg, not Meg from the video you've been watching. I know, bit of a weird one. The reason for this interruption is because 2 weeks after I made this video and uploaded it to YouTube, something came to light that has muddied things up even more for Penelope Jackson. Penelope's been married a few times. 4 total, which is quite a lot of marriages, I will admit. She's not quite Henry VIII worthy of divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived. Her third marriage was to a man called Mr. Warrender. She'd actually started the affair with Mr. Jackson, the victim in the current crime. It is claimed by the family of Mr. Warrender that when he found out that his wife had been cheating on him, he took his life because he was dishonoured, with a family member speaking to the Daily Mail and saying there is no question that the affair drove him to his death. After what she did to him and his family before she went on to murder her next husband, she should never be released from prison. She is a ruthless, greedy, angry woman. She is a danger to society. Now, this does not in any way impact what has already happened to Penelope Jackson. It does shine a rather ugly light on her, and whether anything from this could ever amount to anything, I'm not entirely sure. Now, before I get you back to the conclusion of this video, there is one last detail I found fascinating within all of this. Penelope Jackson started an affair with David Jackson. Well, Alan Warrender, who was married to Penelope Jackson, when she then started the affair with David Jackson, was married to Beverly, and he started an affair with Penelope Jackson. It's just a small detail, but it's nice to see this cheating transfer as relationships go by. Now back to regular programming. For the sake of it, Alan Jackson is going to be visiting with his wife, Penelope Jackson, while she's in prison, so that she knows she is not alone, as he fully supports her and her appeal, and he was one of those not called upon to give evidence with regards to David Jackson's behaviour towards Penelope. So time for you to get in your cell, Penelope. Welcome to the ISO cubes. They've gone beyond the sentencing guidelines. I take no issue with that, of course, because we're dicks here and it's well known. Enjoy your time. I'd like to know what everyone thinks about this one, especially that video. It's very interesting. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Thank you for joining. Leave a comment, smash the like, and thank you all very much for listening.